Next, Matt Sharp is going to join us. The Kentucky State Legislature overrode a veto by the governor as it relates to transgender reassignment surgery for minors. So in the argument, we showed you some short clips of what took place in the Kentucky State Capitol. Let's roll a little bit more of that footage.
Human rights! Trans rights are human rights! Trans rights are human rights! Trans rights are human rights!
All right, so that was a protest that broke out over the Kentucky State Legislature overriding a veto by the governor that will now effectively ban genital mutilation in children, for children. My next guest is Matt Sharp. He is the Alliance Defending Freedom Senior Counsel and Director of the Center for Legislative Advocacy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Did you ever think people would so passionately defend mutilating a child's genitals?
Yeah, it's really tragic. I mean, here you have lawmakers that are listening to science, listening to parents, listening to individuals that have experienced these damaging hormones and surgeries and saying, we don't want this to happen to any child in Kentucky. No child should be subject to these irreversible surgeries and hormones that can leave them sterile for life. And I think that's why it's so encouraging to see the lawmakers standing up, overriding this veto and joining the other states that are working to protect kids.
Well, you know, they're calling it anti-trans. I'm looking at some of the provisions here from this bill. We're talking about starting kids on this path as early as 9, 8 years old. And this is what I find frightening, and this is where I really applaud Governor Ron DeSantis for what he's doing in Florida and Texas Governor Greg Abbott, is that you have untrained people who are starting this process, that if a kid displays a certain awkward behavior or basically maybe experiencing other mental health issues, and the librarian says, well, you might be trans, so I'll keep, clothing here in the library. When you come to school, you can change, and I'll call you by your chosen new name, and, we'll treat you socially like you're a girl when you're really a boy, or vice versa. And then this starts to work its way up the food chain, and then by the time the parents find out about it, they have a choice to make. It's either ally or bigot. And these activists are essentially saying, we will take your child out of the house if you don't comply.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. We talk about this pipeline, this social transition to medical transition. And as you said, it's starting in schools when they're telling kids, oh, you may have been born in the wrong body. Let's help you pick a different name, a different pronoun. And then we're seeing again and again, that's leading to then the puberty blockers, the hormones, the surgeries. And there was one study that came out of the United Kingdom where they're now walking back giving these harmful drugs and procedures to children. 98% of kids that were put on puberty blockers would go on to the hormones and ultimately go on to the surgeries. That's why these lawmakers are stepping in and saying, we've got to protect kids from that. And not only protecting them from the medical side, but as you said, protecting them from the stuff that's happening in schools, making sure that parents are making these decisions, not some school official pushing this ideology on young children who don't know better, who are confused, and rather making sure that we are protecting the innocence of kids, letting them go through natural puberty so that they can resolve a lot of this confusion naturally as they should.
Yeah, we're seeing, we're always told whatever the Europeans do, that's what we got to do. And we're seeing, even in England, they're pulling back from this. In Finland, they're pulling back from this. In Denmark and Sweden and Norway, they're pulling back from this. I think the aggregate opinion is that, almost all of these kids, when they go through puberty, like you said, naturally, this turns out to be just a phase. But but once they're trapped in this cycle, it's very hard to get them. And we had Ollie London on the program yesterday. We had Kat Kattinson, one of the detransitioners, traveling the country. We've watched Chloe Cole. These people are saying that their regret is coming with scars. You can't give a young girl look. If someone has cancer and they have a double mastectomy, they can get breast implants, breast augmentation, and have, what appears to be breasts. I'm trying to use the language correctly. But when you take that out of a woman who's not yet had a child yet, if she can even have a child after years of being on testosterone, she'll never have the choice to breastfeed that child. And look, I realize in the modern era, most women don't breastfeed, but they should at least have that option.
Yeah, I mean, you hear these stories of these young women. I've heard several of them that we've been testifying with, telling the stories of the damage this has done to their bodies, of what a double mastectomy does to a young woman, what the testosterone does. And as you said, we're ultimately, for so many of these kids, we're depriving them of the ability to ever have a child of their own. We're depriving them of the ability to have a normal, healthy adulthood. And I think that's why it's so important to see what Kentucky is doing, to see what places like South Dakota, Mississippi, and the other states that are taking up this legislation and passing it. They're looking at the science, right? We say follow the science. They're looking at the science. They're looking at what these European countries are doing. They're looking at data coming out from the U.S. and saying, this is not helping kids. A lot of them have these other mental issues. Why aren't we prioritizing helping on the psychological side, helping kids with autism, helping them with these other issues, rather than immediately putting them on this medical pipeline that does irreversible damages that can render them sterile for life? We need to be focusing on the good mental health for these kids and helping them navigate these difficult issues that they're facing, not putting them on puberty blockers, hormones, and sterilizing surgeries.
This is the only mental health issue where we enhance the person's dysphoria. If I went to a psychologist and said, I think I'm a lizard, the psychologist wouldn't say, well, okay, you are a lizard, so let's get your body fully tattooed green and fork your tongue, and you can start wearing, yellow contact lenses, and now we have to educate the public to treat you like a lizard. The doctor would say, in essence, you're crazy, you're not a lizard, you're going to have to get used to the fact that you're a human being. If we're dealing with someone who's an alcoholic, we don't say, you identify as an alcoholic, here, drink some more, because that's what you are. We would say, you need to be treated for alcoholism and get you off the alcohol. This is the only mental health issue where we as a society are being told we not only have to play along, we have to enhance it to its fullest.
Yeah, I know some of the experts we've worked with have brought up that exact point. You look at a young girl dealing with body image issues of eating disorders, and you don't say, yes, you're overweight, you need to eat less, we need to give you surgery.
Yeah, body image dysphoria.
Yeah, and that's why we're seeing more and more of these voices speaking out saying, this is not good medicine, this is harmful, this is dangerous to kids. Let's focus on the mental health issues like we do with these other issues. Let's make sure parents are involved on all of these issues, not kicking and pushing them out as we're seeing some of these school officials do, of painting parents as the enemy, but recognizing parents are part of the solution to all of this. You want parents who love and care for their kids, that want to see what's best for them, and make sure that they're not being pushed away while these kids are being put on this one-way pipeline towards gender medicalization.
When we talk about people like they have what they call gymorexia, where they work out so much they become sinewy, at some point it's not healthy anymore. You're working out too much. We say you have to eat, you have to take care of yourself. We don't go, that's who you are, and if it's bad for you, whatever. We just need to learn how to, adapt to your new reality. I got to leave it there. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.